What is up, fellow sickos? I am joined by one of the most certifiably fantabulous sickos in the business, and it is his send-off from the podcasting world, I think, for quite some time. He is Brian Toporek. He is a senior multi-platform editor for Bleacher Report. He covers the NBA for Forbes and for Liberty Ballers, and he was, until recently, the co-host of the NBA podcast. You should still go subscribe over there because Mort is good people. And look, July's not over yet, so he might appear on one more episode there of pre-recorded audio that he has. But it is Mr. Brian Toporek. You know him well. He's been so gracious enough to come on a bunch over the past few months. We are back to talk about which NBA players have more trade value. That's like typical, oh, we're pretty much in August people type of content. Mr. Toporek, how are you doing? Are you gonna is there any chance that you'll get misty-eyed by the end of this episode because you're not going to be podcasting for a couple minutes? I think
there's a real chance. Yeah, I broke out. So we had our house staging today because we were getting ready to move in a couple months. So we had to hide every possession in our entire house, either in a closet or our utility room. So as I was frantically unpacking today, I was like, oh, I guess I do need my microphone one more time. So I could not have asked for a better send-off than this. Thank you, as always, for having me. Very much looking forward to this. And then, yeah, I'm going radio silent for at least a month or two.
You have a good reason, though. You announced the birth of your second child. We are all very excited for you. We're also already lamenting collectively the lack of sleep that you're going to have over the next few months as well.
Thank you. Yep. At least this time we know. We, as you said, it's number 2. So we are clear-eyed as to what to expect with the newborn. I hear the toddler tends to be the trickier one.
Well, because they're mobile, right?
Well, they're just, he's been used to being the only child for 3+ years.
Oh, yeah.
So it is we are very aware of what's coming in the next few weeks, and he has no idea beyond, we've been reading in books and talking to him a bunch about it. We brought out all the baby stuff today. But yeah, I think it's still going to be a pretty big shock to the system. So
it's kind of like a situation where in Houston, they were like trying to put other stars around James Harden at one point, and he just couldn't. He can never fully adjust. So here's hoping that your son is better at adjusting to another ball-dominant co-star in your family.
How dare you compare him to James Harden? How dare you, sir?
Hey, you're probably raising him as a Sixers fan. Very apropos.
That's true.
I didn't compare him. I said, here's hoping he's better then.
Yes. Well, he does have the emotional maturity of James Harden right now. I will say that much.
So, for anyone at home, the way this is going to work is I have a list of players, and we're going to just basically exchange them. We'll pick them out of the list. Which player has more trade value right now? As of July 30th, we're recording this. We will take in whatever factors Brian and I want as the other exchanges them. I'm hoping I came up with interesting enough pairings to where it's close enough and you're not like, oh, this is super easy. I'm sure there'll be some of those. But if you are ready though, Brian, I will get us started. Who has more trade value? Darius Garland or Jamal Murray?
Ooh, interesting. All right. Man, this is tough. I mean, so Jamal Murray's got 1 year left on his contract. Probably going to get a full max. I mean, reportedly had already agreed to an extension that he is still yet.
Do you think that was sort of, oh, you want to go play for Team Canada? Like you go not injure yourself and then we'll pay you.
Very well might have been. So I'm assuming he's going to get extended this summer. If he doesn't, he's going to get the full max next year. And I think that bakes into the trade value. I would think because he's won the championship already, he's proved that he can be the number 2 guy on a championship team. He probably has more, although, I guess it's if you are convinced that you can re-sign him. If the Nuggets decided they were going to trade Jamal Murray and you thought he was a real flight risk, is he a possible rental, then Garland would have more. But if it was you're going to trade for Jamal Murray and you're going to give him a 4-year max extension and he's going to sign it, then I think teams would just rather have Jamal Murray in a vacuum. So I lean that, but I'm curious if I'm totally off base or what you think there.
So if I'm just going to assume that Jamal Murray is going to sign his next contract with whoever he's traded to, I'm still probably taking Darius Garland by a hair because, and part of this might just be, I think he has more offensive upside as a main guy, whereas we are in year whatever of Jamal Murray in Denver, and it's these part of it might be the way Michael Malone plays them. I think when you look at it, more and more of Murray's minutes, a larger share percentage-wise will come next to Nikola Jokic, so that might be a preference, or is it a necessity because they don't trust him to run bench units? We've seen, I know it was the East, but we saw Darius Garland pre the Cavs being loaded make an all-star team, and he's had trouble adjusting to a smaller role, which in last season anyway, he was getting hit in the face like 10 times per 36 minutes or whatever it was. Like I just would hold out hope that I think he would be a little bit more shifty as the alpha creator on the offensive end. And I say that though, Jamal Murray's hit incredibly big shots, like clutch shots in the playoffs, in the finals. He's won a championship. He's also like it's not all the time, but he has a gear defensively that Darius Garland does not. So it's close. I say it's by a hair, but if we assume Murray's going to sign his next contract, I probably prefer to have Darius Garland on the fun max than Jamal Murray on the 30% max deal.
That is a fair critique. And yeah, I mean, the injuries are certainly a concern there. I think for me, Garland, it's wrong to say he's like backslid because his numbers, of course, went down when they got Donovan Mitchell. And we've seen what he's able to do without Mitchell. Like I understood those, the rumors that got leaked where if Mitchell signs the extension, he's going to request a trade. Like I would like to see Garland on his own team. Like if the Spurs traded for him this offseason, I thought that was a perfect landing spot for him. And I think had he gone there, played with Wemby, this is probably Darius Garland by a good degree a year from now. But without seeing that, it is hard to remember of like, oh, there's the Darius Garland who, has this like all-star, if not all NBA upside. And it's like, ooh, okay. Well, I know Jamal Murray's also never been an all-star, but again, we've
the West is the West.
Jamal.
And honestly, if Jamal Murray never gets injured, maybe this isn't even a debate potentially.
Yeah. I mean, he's, playoff, maybe that's it. Darius Garland over regular season Jamal Murray, and then playoff Jamal over Darius Garland.
I mean, but he was banged up, of course. Like playoff Jamal can be all over the place too. Like it's just so I would just take Garland by a hair, but it's more about me betting on what Garland hasn't done or what I think he could do. Because if you're going by track record, I think it has to be Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
Who would you like? What is the one you want to throw at me?
This one just seems tailor-made for you. So I have to do it. And I feel like you're going to pay me back in a second. So Brandon Ingram or Julius Randle?
So Julius Randle's on a contract that he presumably would extend off of because he has that like $29 million player option, whatever it is. Brandon Ingram wants, I think we haven't heard anything about what Julius Randle wants. I'm sure he wants the max, but like the money that's been thrown around for Brandon Ingram is he wants the 4 years, $200+ million extension. And not only does New Orleans not want to give it to him, but the reporting from Mark Stein has been that no team wants to give it to him. And that's kind of hampered his value. I'm going to go Brandon Ingram, but there's like Julius Randle's a 2-time All-NBA player. And I thought he proved before he got injured last year that he could do more of the accessory work. Then it didn't have to just be all Julius Randle, everything. And he would look at a place in this complementary capacity. With that said, I think Julius Randle to me is a one position player. He can be a center on offense, but like you can't use him as the center. Like you would maybe on the Celtics, you could use him as the center on defense, but like because they have so many good perimeter guys, or maybe in Houston or something. But Brandon Ingram, you could at least move around positionally more. But when it comes to Brandon Ingram, what gives me pause is that even when the Pelicans were at their peak last year and it was all Zion everything and they were working together, they still led such separate existences. It wasn't like, oh, look at that Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram 2-man game. Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram 2-man game. And like Julius Randle has shown he can do the 2-man stuff with another fellow star. It's Ingram, right? Like Ingram is the answer. Or is it, oh, Julius Randle's going to take less than the max or maybe picks up his player option. So does he have like more of a market? If you go through teams off the cuff, it's hard to find trade suitors for either one of these guys, but I just ultimately think there'd be more suitors for Brandon Ingram. And that's why, to me, I would default to him.
Yeah, this was a trick question because the answer was neither. Neither of them have any trade value at all. No,
None? You don't think they have any trade
no,
value?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I think both of them would. I don't think either of them have the trade value that you would associate with a player of their talent, which is a reflection of they're both heading into a presumptive contract year. Ingram definitely. Randall is presumably going to turn down the player option. To your point, we don't know that Randall is like gunning for the 4-year max. And frankly, after seeing what Jalen Brunson just did, I don't know how, if you're Julius Randle, if you want to stay in New York, you cannot go to that front office with a straight face and say, like, yeah, I mean, like our best player just took, 100 million less than he was eligible to receive, but I'm going to hold out for that full max.
Right. And the other
They'll
thing,
laugh
too,
about
is he
it.
could say, well, look what you gave OG Anunoby and Brunson
Yeah.
to look whatever. They might just say, we gave it to OG Anunoby because there were teams that would have given him the 4-year max. So you go out on the open market next summer and find the team that's going to give you the 4-year max and we'll give you the same deal.
Right. Yeah. I think to your point, Randall, I mean, I guess Ingram, this past playoffs was horrific, but he was just miscast in number one role. And maybe that's the same thing with Randall. Maybe he was just so bad in the playoffs that one year because he was in the number one role. And now, if we saw him, he was hurt last year, obviously, but like maybe on this year's Knicks team, if he stays with the Knicks and he's behind Brunson for sure, and then in some amorphous like 2 through 4, I don't know who's the number 2 option on a given night between him, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges. Like maybe that will make him better. But I do have some concern that he is a quote unquote 82 game player rather than a 16 game player. And whereas Ingram, he like conceptually he should be the right answer.
Well, he had what was that series against the Suns without Zion a couple years ago? Like he was a monster in that.
Yeah. And like, I mean, that's the thing. We've seen him take, the big hesitation with him is just he takes so many, or does not take enough threes, takes too many mid-range shots. And we've seen him in New Orleans, like he was taking 6 threes a game a couple years ago. Like there's no reason that he couldn't get back to that. So is it just like a coaching thing? Like what's the breakdown here that's holding Brandon Ingram back from his ceiling? It feels like Randall is closer to his current ceiling than Ingram is. Ingram still has some room to grow, and I think that might give him a little more trade value. But given the contract, like if he sticks to, I want a 4-year max, I mean, I don't blame any team not wanting to trade for him because no team should want to give him a 4-year max right now. No team should max either one of these players.
Okay, it is my turn.
I'm pleasantly surprised. I thought there was a really I thought there was a real. If I trolled you with Randall, I thought there was a clear one you were firing back with. So thank you for sparing me, at least for now.
Yeah, I was curious as to what you thought, or who you thought I was going to throw out there. So, James Harden or Karl-Anthony Towns?
This is also a troll. Well done.
That's what I thought. This is the one I thought you were talking about. I'm trying to look through the list I have. I'm like, what does Brian not want to talk about? Let me do that one next.
Number 4. I won't say the names, but number 4 was.
Yeah, duh.
Yeah. This one, I think it's Karl-Anthony Towns by a pretty significant margin. And maybe I'm wrong here, but I know there's the concern of like, do you want to pay this guy the 35% max under the new CBA? But James Harden is what, 35 or about to turn 35 on a 2-year deal, has torched his way out of 3 teams now in the last 5 years. Like, I would rather just pay or have the guy who he might have some concerns. Can he be a number 1 option on a championship team? No. Can James Harden be the number 1 option on a championship team at this stage of his career? No. But Karl-Anthony Towns like hasn't moped his way out of multiple teams and proved this past season that he could be integral on a team that went very far in the playoffs. So
while playing, I think you would argue not his best position. He can play the position he's playing, but it's certainly not his best position.
Yeah, like I think there are team constructs where he would make a ton of sense, where that team, like he is not a superb rim protector. So that's the concern with him. Can you build an elite defense if Karl-Anthony Towns is your center? Probably not. But there are also teams like Indiana this year where maybe you should double down on offense. If you have Karl-Anthony Towns as your center and you have a point guard akin to Tyrese Halliburton. Like plug Karl-Anthony Towns in Atlanta. I know that's been a popular one with Trae Young, or plug him in with Charlotte with LaMelo Ball, and just say screw it, we're not going to defend anyone. First to 140 wins. I think there's some merit to that. I think I would pretty sizably rather have Towns at this point, even with the concerns about his contract, just because like Harden's on a 1+1. I mean,
but on a tidy number with every
yeah.
year he's going and not having a market. And so like it's easier to keep him on a repressed number, it seems like. I still would pick Towns too. The 4 years, 220.4 is a lot for someone who feels like he's probably best suited as the third best player on a contending team. Because I mean, he was what was he, the third most valuable player on Minnesota this year behind Rudy and Edwards. So, but here's what I would ask you. What's more likely, that James Harden is able to fully adapt to whatever team he's on, to either have a lesser role, to allow a younger or better, more ball dominant star to thrive, and he's going to thrive off of them? Or Karl-Anthony Towns is on a team where he's the center and they have an above average defense? I think it's the latter still, because you look at some of the teams, I feel like we're seeing it, maybe not, I don't know if it's always on purpose, but doesn't it feel like we're seeing it more a little bit where teams might be building their defense from the outside in rather than the inside? Like look at Houston would be an example. Even a little bit, Boston has Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford, but like they've just, the Knicks might be a good example. I know Mitchell Robinson and Hartenstein, but if you're talking about playing Randall at center or Cat at center, they probably have enough perimeter defensive talent when you look at Hart and OG and McHale and even Deuce McBride right now to say like we could maybe have a kind of a liability at the 5 and still have a good defense.
Yeah, as long as Towns doesn't foul out in 12 minutes, which is always a risk for him. But yeah, I think there are more teams where Towns would make sense, where like Harden was a free agent last summer and no one either wanted him or was willing to make whatever sacrifices they needed to get him. But I think if Karl-Anthony Towns became a free agent, teams would be lining up out the door to go get him. So I know, I know the contract, like Harden, without question, is on a better contract than Karl-Anthony Towns right now. But I think given their age, given what's happened over the last couple of years with Harden, I think teams would be very, very nervous about trading for him. It's like if you're not going to be in LA or you're not going to an immediate championship contender, and even if you are, like I just don't know if you're winning a championship at this point with James Harden playing a major role in your team.
Who do you have for me?
This one is just tailor-made for you. Jaden McDaniels or Devin Vassell?
Jaden McDaniels or Devin Vassell. So I'm going to go with Devin Vassell. The contract's a little more expensive. He's one of those players. I'm trying to think of a good analog. It's not as bad as this, but it's like when some people think that DeAndre Hunter's like a good defender because it just looks like he should be. Devin Vassell kind of has the movement of just, he should be a better defender than he is, but he's not. And Jaden McDaniels is all defense caliber. We know this. But I also think Devin Vassell has an on-ball offensive package that a lot of people just don't fully appreciate. Like he can get to his pull-ups, he can come around ball screens, he can run a little bit of the offense, not a ton of it. I'd probably like to see even more of like, what does the Wemby, Devin Vassell 2-man game look like with better spacing around them and higher volume of those opportunities? I think it's him because I value the offensive malleability over McDaniels, who had a good playoffs, but like his 3-point shot fell off a cliff. And this could be a lack of imagination on my part because it's not set up for him to, one, have the space in the half court to explore what he does on the ball a ton, but also just inside their pecking order, there are people that naturally usurp him. I think I'm going with Devin Vassell. Where would you land here?
I would go with Vassell too. It's close, but I think we've seen teams, and not the Jaden McDaniels is this type of player, because he proved in this run of the playoffs that like his defense is so elite, and that if you leave him open, he can knock down open shots. It's not like you leave him open and he's gonna shoot 20% from deep, and that's just how you beat him. But we just have seen teams go with that strategy in the playoffs of just like, okay, this guy is just not not with McDaniels specifically, but I'm thinking like a Matisse Thybulle or a Tony Allen back in the day, where like we are not afraid of you and we're going to send extra attention elsewhere. So if McDaniels can level up offensively this year, I think he probably overtakes Vassell. But because Vassell is so much more versatile offensively, I think he'll have potentially more value in the playoffs down the road. And I guess that they're pretty similar age-wise, right? If not the same age.
Yeah, there are. So Devin Vassell is, I think he's 24, if I'm not mistaken. Did I get that wrong? He is 23.
Okay.
And then Jaden McDaniels, I think, yeah, he should be 23 too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so
yeah,
big
they're
difference
both born in 2000. So
Cool.
millennium babies, excuse me. I think that's going to be a controversial one. If there's comments or people are in Discord, let us know if it's just controversial to take Devin Vassell over Jaden McDaniels as a trade value asset. Not, and by the way, we should have laid this out the front. I'm not predicting any of these players would be traded. I'm just curious as to if you were going to move them, who gets you more?
Right.
It is my turn. Zach LaVine or Ben Simmons. And just as a framing, in case some of the listeners don't understand why, it's because of the contracts. Right. Where Zach LaVine has 3 years, 140 plus, whatever it is. Ben Simmons is on an expiring deal. So it's this, you're trading for Ben Simmons because he's on an expiring contract.
Yes, you're trading for $40 million of cap space next summer. I don't understand how we've gotten to this point with Zach LaVine. And did you see the story on ESPN today? I think it was by, oh man, I forget who. I saw it earlier. There was some quote from like a Bulls executive that was basically like, well, Zach LaVine has never won, and he always just tries to play his way. So he can either try to listen to his coaches, or if he wants to force his way out, he can come in and just keep doing the same thing he's always done. So it's like, I'm sure there's some stuff behind the scenes. Like, maybe it's not just the injury stuff with Zach LaVine that's causing so much concern about, oh, this guy's got 3 years and 140 million left on his contract, or whatever the actual number is. We've seen him be a good player much more recently than we've seen Ben Simmons be a good player. And I know it's just the expiring contract with him, but like, I would much rather, unless you are fairly certain that we're going to make good use of this $40 million of cap space that Ben Simmons is going to open up. So if you're a team that was already projecting to have cap space next summer, and this is like your way of doing what Philly just did this offseason, like, we're going to create $65 million of cap space, and we're going to go sign Jamal Murray next offseason or something like that, then cool. Ben Simmons is the right answer. But Zach LaVine, I just can't help but feel like the team that ends up trading for him is going to not regret it. Like, they're gonna look back on this and be like, why was this guy available for so cheap? Like, if the Lakers were to combine D'Angelo Russell and whatever other salaries they needed to get up to Zach LaVine, and they don't even have to give up one of their 2 first-round picks, that feels like an easy yes for them. So I can understand why Simmons would have some appeal just from we can become a cap space behemoth next offseason, but it's also worth remembering, free agents typically don't, like, star free agent. I mean, it's been Jalen Brunson and Paul George since 2019, basically, or since 2020. So, like, you can shoot for the moon and hope that you get a Jamal Murray or someone, a Brandon Ingram, a Julius Randle even, but chances are you're either going to have to overpay for them, or it's just, you're not going to get that player. So I think the cap space panacea is not always what it's made up to be, whereas Zach LaVine, I think, has this still a pretty high ceiling.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think Zach LaVine's the clear answer, actually. I just wanted to see where you're at. And also, I am wondering if people think, if teams will be like, see what the Sixers just did, which was a masterclass in cap management, and think, oh, we could do the same. And that brings back cap space planning a little bit. But just the free agency landscape the past half decade or whatever does not support prioritizing getting this, loading up on expiring money to have all this space. And the other thing too is, what are the deals that are like so bad that teams are, oh, we really just want even if you're not going to have cap space, we just want to get off it. Is it if Bradley Beal would waive his no trade clause to go to Brooklyn at this point? And then it's like, and if you were the Bulls, would you trade Zach LaVine? There need to be more money, whatever, but like, would you just trade Zach LaVine for Ben Simmons' expiring contract if you could? I honestly don't know. So the deals, because the cap's going up, and also because we so rarely have these super long onerous contract. Like the fact that we're talking about Zach LaVine on a 3-year commitment as some albatross is incredible when you think about it. So I think that makes it easy to select him, not just because he has value on the court, but it's what is the end game? Like, what is the contract that is so bad aside from Beal's, just because of that no trade clause? Like, what is I don't even spot, like, Zach LaVine's to me is not even just like, if I could sub that out for Ben Simmons and I'm the Bulls in support of tanking, I guess, sure. But and also with Zach LaVine, we've seen him on an inept iteration of the Timberwolves front office, basically. And then going to the Bulls, which have just been a dumpster fire logistically since he's been there. And so you could say he's not a winner. He also hasn't played for organizations that have ever fielded a team that should have won.
Right. Yeah. He's not a winner because he's played on garbage teams his entire NBA career, except for like the 1.5 season where the Bulls had a healthy Lonzo.
And look, they were good though.
Yeah.
Like that.
I know they were the number 1 seed in the East for the first half of that season. Like I think it's just I understand all of the concerns that go with LaVine, but to your point about Simmons and like what if you follow the cap space plan? If anything, I wonder if this offseason is going to force more guys toward taking extensions and like more of the like middle class. Like if I mean, who's up for a contract this year? Say Jonathan Kuminga, even. Like, does he just take the extension because he's scared that the market
we had unless anything happens with Isaac Okoro, we didn't have any restricted offer sheets in free agency. Like even at least we got Paul Reed last year, like with Utah on the offer sheet.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Darius. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think, I don't know, if I were an agent, I'd be telling my clients just take the extension because we saw Caleb Martin. I mean, freaking Tyus Jones signed a minimum contract. Like, Tyus Jones is way too good to be signing a minimum contract. So maybe this was just a 1-year anomaly, but I'm gonna guess a lot of guys are not going to chance that. And then if the market corrects in 2025, maybe we see more guys eschewing it next off season. But the cap space would freak me out.
If it is a blip, maybe that would explain some of it. But like, look at what happened with Caleb Martin. Look at what happened with Malik Beasley. Like he ended up on 1 year, $6 million after having a pretty good year in Milwaukee. It's Gary Trent Jr. and Tyus Jones are taking real risks. Like those two specific, they're really betting on the market just bouncing back, and we'll see how that plays out for sure.
Yeah. All right, my turn. Okay, let's do 2 players who don't suck. Stephen Curry or Kevin Durant.
So they have similar. So KD was technically extension eligible this year, which is just like he feels like he's always extension eligible and requesting a trade. Like it's like always one or the other with him. So Kevin Durant has 2 years left on his contract, right, including next season. So he has 2 years, and Steph is the same because he has that. Yeah, he has 2 years left on his deal, including next season. Steph's entering. He's 36 now, so he's 36 and a half. Kevin Durant's entering his age 36 season. I'm fresh off watching him just return to Team USA and absolutely just destroy everything in sight. I still think that it's Steph. I just, in Phoenix last year, seeing how much he would struggle at points with increased defensive attention, I almost feel like he's Kevin Durant. The fact that he's as good as he is after suffering an Achilles injury is absolutely absurd. But I almost feel like he's going to need to be that, like, I feel like we're going to see a reduced version of Kevin Durant more than Steph. And maybe I'm wrong because Steph has to work harder for his shots a lot of the time than Kevin Durant. I am also factoring in kind of the vibes here. It feels like every team that Kevin Durant is on, the vibes ever since he left Oklahoma City have just submarined. And with Steph, it's never going to be like that. And I don't know who's the bigger injury risk at this point, just because they both have major injuries in their rear view. Also, the fact that Kevin Durant played so much last season actually concerns me moving forward. So I think it's Steph. Who would you pick?
I would pick Steph as well. I mean, the vibes thing was one of the first things that came to mind for me, which might be unfair to KD because a lot of that is not necessarily his fault, especially in Brooklyn. I think he was probably the least to blame for that thing going south. But I mean, Steph, there is just some unquantifiable joy to the way he plays the game, and I think it's infectious, and I think it it probably gives his teammates extra confidence that like, well, we have this guy on the court, so we, even if we're down 10 points in the fourth quarter, he's going to pull up from 35 feet and he could, he goes on one of these heaters and all of a sudden he can go on like an 8-0 run in a minute just by himself. Whereas KD, this is going to sound harsh and I don't mean
aggregators.
But like, we've seen Steph be the best player on a championship team without question. We've seen it at least twice, if not 4 times. Maybe KD, I know KD got the finals MVP in both of the years that they won it together. But like, it was always Steph's team, right? That was kind of one of the driving forces that led KD to leave. So we still haven't seen KD be the unquestioned best player on a championship team, whereas we have seen that with Steph, and I just have to weigh that in.
If you didn't weigh that in, would the answer still be Steph though?
It would be closer, because like in theory, really both of those guys are as plug and play as you can get. Like there's no system, there's no team that you could drop either of them on where it's like, nope, that guy doesn't fit. There are a lot like Towns. There are some teams where it just would not make sense. James Harden, there are some teams where he just would not make sense. That is not the case with Steph or KD. And like KD, the archetype of however tall he is. I know he refuses to admit he's 7 foot. So we'll say 6'11". Guy who, has whatever 7'5", 7'6" wingspan, can shoot over everyone, one of the best shooters in the game. Steph, the best shooter in the game. KD, it's like you wish he would fire more from deep than he does. He's a great shooter, but
yeah,
like honestly, double the volume. Like take a Steph number of threes and you'd be even better. KD just also seems, again, this is like an unfair perception of him, I think, but he doesn't seem to have that same sort of like takeover gene or instinct that Steph does. Like Steph against Boston, I'm thinking when they were down 2-1 in game 4, it was just like he refused to let them lose that game. Whereas KD, I just don't see that as often. It's like it's what LeBron used to be killed for back in his early Cleveland day too, where he's like too deferential, where it's like he needs to be more selfish at times. And I don't think I'm not trying to call Steph a selfish basketball player because he very much is not, but he also understands the gravity of moments, I think, a little bit more than KD, and is like willing to put the team on his back and just say like, no, this is my team and we are not losing tonight, and I'm going to shoot 35 times and I'm going to score 75 points, and that's that. I just haven't seen that as much.
It's interesting that what you're using is the impetus to pick Steph if you factor out sort of the intangibles part of the equation, whatever you want to call it. And I think I would agree with you, but it's also what concerns me about Steph too, because I would trust him in more difficult situations at this point. But because he has to work so hard to get his looks, whether on or off the ball, I'm almost just like, how is his body going to hold up? And KD he's not this super, especially if you're going to use him as kind of like a big, a lot of the times on defense, he's going to give you more value on that end of the floor too. And yet I still go Steph because I think that the ceiling on your team, if these guys are your first or second best players, I still think it's higher with Steph Curry than it is with Kevin Durant. My turn. Jimmy Butler or Kawhi Leonard, Mr. Toporek? I'm just picking all former Sixers as often as I can here.
Great. Please don't have Tyrese Maxey anywhere on this list because I'm picking Tyrese Maxey. I don't care.
For anyone who this is so deep into the podcast that it won't matter, I did pick players that I could envision in some scenario, like just becoming available for the most part of like, if the Spurs wanted to get a superstar and decided, we're going to move Devin Vassell, or the Timberwolves are looking to cut costs or need an offense. But I don't expect most of these guys to ever become available. But like it was, Tyrese Maxey's not going anywhere. He's not even trade eligible at the moment. So
that's right. Yeah, he is not on this list. Jimmy Butler or Kawhi Leonard, man.
So Butler has the player option. He has this season and then a player option. Kawhi Leonard is starting his 3-year extension this season. So that, of course, factors in. But it's, I don't know, the injury of it all with Kawhi, man.
Right. I think I lean Jimmy just for that reason. Just like you just cannot trust Kawhi to be healthy, to stay healthy throughout an 82-game regular season, and then be healthy at the start of the playoffs, and more importantly, be healthy at the end of the playoffs. I know Jimmy, Pat Riley roasted him at the exit interview this year for his lack of availability during the regular season. So if that forces him to play more and he gets hurt, then that's a concern. But we've seen him since 2019 alone, 2 finals trips, and one game away, one shot away from a third on a team that frankly probably had no business, especially the 2023 Heat had zero business going that far. So I know there's he wants an extension, he wants a 2-year max. It sounds like other teams were willing to give it to him if he did force a trade out of Miami this offseason. So strictly like the injury risk with Kawhi, I think has, he's on a below max, so it's only like $10 million below the max he could have taken. So if Jimmy gets $10 million more, I'm willing to just bet the extra $10 million on Jimmy over the next 3 years, because I at least think he has a better chance of staying healthy, unless maybe this is just Tibbs miles finally catching up to him after all these years.
Yeah, that's because he's not exactly a billboard of durability either.
Right.
I think Kawhi still is the higher ceiling as a player, that more substantial peak, but how long is he going to sustain it? And they've now tried everything. It was okay, load manage him, and he's not going to be healthy to end the season. All right, let's just have him play. Okay, he's not going to be healthy to end the season. And so it's just, I think it is Jimmy Butler, but it's the fact that he has free agency coming up, or the player option, and Kawhi is under contract, and what Kawhi could be. It would be like, if you're a team that already has your best player in place, I do think it might be more tempting to have Kawhi come in than Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
Although a lot of people have wondered whether if Kawhi got traded, he would simply retire because he doesn't want to leave where he lives right now. So you might have to bake that into your calculus too.
Right. Like there will be, if the Clippers, when the Clippers do decide to pivot, because it's pretty clear that they're going to at some point in the next few years, there will be teams that line up for Kawhi. They're going to take the risk to do it. I just think Butler would be the smarter gamble of the two. So, I mean, yeah, maybe because, again, it's kind of similar to the Jamal Murray thing, where if you're trading for Jimmy Butler and you're not confident in your ability to re-sign him, you would probably offer more for Kawhi Leonard because he is under contract. But if you are trading for Jimmy Butler, say I'm going to offer you the 2-year max and he's willing to take it, I would be willing to offer more for Jimmy Butler, because I'm just so worried that, yes, Kawhi, I agree with you. Kawhi has the higher ceiling. We've seen Kawhi, when he's healthy, is still two-way superstar. In a way, the shooting is what differentiates him from Jimmy. I mean, Jimmy's also a two-way superstar, but Kawhi's a much better three-point shooter than Jimmy. But
well, what about playoff Jimmy?
Yeah, that's right. I forgot. All of a sudden, he becomes a 40% three-point shooter, just like playoff Josh Hart, apparently. No, I still lean Jimmy, assuming that you're able to keep him past this year.
Do you think Jimmy Butler can be an effective secondary option?
Yeah, I mean, we saw it in Philly.
I guess I'm just not used to seeing it in Miami basically ever at this point, that I've deleted that part from my brain.
Yeah, he was a great second option.
Element, that's a huge part of being the secondary option, is
the
shooting, the off-ball shooting element, that I feel like Kawhi, or he can do the catch and drive stuff for sure. So your turn again.
All right. This is what I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. So I'm just going to ask this, and I'm hoping it's as easy as I think it is. Jerami Grant or Kyle Kuzma?
It's Kyle Kuzma. I don't think the gap is big enough on defense between them, actually. We've been on this weird tug of war where it was, okay, Kyle Kuzma was underrated on defense, and then felt like he was overrated, and now it kind of feels like he's underrated on defense again. And I do think Jerami Grant is the better secondary offensive option in terms of, if you don't want this guy to dribble and you just want him to shoot and get out in transition, he's better suited for that. But we also kind of just have evidence that he doesn't necessarily want to do that in super high volume. And just the contracts, like Kyle Kuzma's deal is not only more team friendly because of the actual dollar amount, but it's on a declining scale. And so you look at the way the cap is projected to go up. He's already 1 year deep into the 4-year, $90 million contract. As of right now, 16.7% of the salary cap next year. Then that drops to 14, and then that drops to under 12. And so Jerami Grant's deal is scaling up. And I think his deal, if he has another really good season, the back end of those 3 years will not look nearly as bad as I think a lot of people thought. But I think the contract, even if I think Jerami Grant's the better player, I don't think the gap is big enough to. I would just rather the flexibility of Kuzma's contract. And it's not just saving a team money. It's easier to match salary with him. It'll be easier to remove him if you want to. So I think it's him, but and there are other scenarios like this. I'm actually going to give you one as the next one where the other player is clearly better, but like the contract or the injury history in some cases, it might make you gravitate towards the inferior player.
Right. Yeah, it's the contract for me. I think it's Kuzma pretty clearly here. Like I know the Lakers have been sniffing around Jerami, and like Portland fans think like they have to get both Lakers picks to get him. I guess that just surprises me.
I don't want to paint a fan base with a broad brush, but Blazers fans this summer have been on one. It feels like relative to what their players are worth via trade, relative to any doubts you have about their rebuilding direction, because they have like a shit ton of centers and there's this weird mix of veterans and they're training future picks to get Denny Avdia, who I love. So they've done some like, and the Blazers are in an okay position. There's more ambiguity in Portland than some Blazers fans, I think, are crediting. And the other thing I'll say is if you think these players are worth all of these picks, your team would have been better last season. It's the classic case of just like Toronto definitely held on to their players too long for the most part. I think they decided they could have gotten a bunch for OG still, but they went another direction with the package they accepted. They probably held on to Siakam for too long, but people had a point when they said everyone wants all these players in their starting lineup, and it's the Raptors are not even a play-in team. And so there is that element to it. And in Portland, it's just more egregious because like, did you just watch? Well, I know there was injuries, but like even when they were fully healthy, and part of that is all right. We had Scoot in. You're dealing with these younger perimeter players and Shaedon Sharpe and Scoop, and the learning curves are steeper. And they were banged up last year. Their rotation was all over the place. I recognize that, but I'm not giving. First of all, I'm not giving 2 first-round picks for Jerami Grant's contract in a vacuum. If I guess if you're a contender and they're able to be like, okay, it's draft day and I'm giving you, I know it's a bottom 5 pick, and then I'm also trading my next year pick. Sure. But I'm not giving you 2 post 2026 first-round picks for Jerami Grant. That's not happening.
Yeah, like those should be reserved for, especially the Lakers. Like, you got to be really sure that's going to help you win now, because like I don't think Jerami Grant makes them substantially better to the point where they're a legitimate championship contender. And if you're giving up both of those picks to do so, that's the type of player you need to get.
It would be nice to see LeBron and AD play next to a 2-way wing again, though. So
that's true.
Look, I would trade if it was Dalton Connect salary and the 2027 pick. Would you still not do it? I'd probably do it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, to your point, I think like if you were able to quantify what one of those picks are, it's like the mystery box element, especially for the Lakers. Like, yeah, sure, things could break right for the Lakers because of the Lakers, and things always break right for them. But there's a chance. I mean, like, we say that, but then remember most of the 2010s for them? Like, they were so bad that they kept getting top 3 or 4 picks every year. Like,
was it so? D'Lo, Lonzo, and Ingram were all number 2 picks, weren't they? Unless I'm misremembering.
The Sixers had, I think if I remember correctly, they traded Michael Carter-Williams for a protected Lakers pick that got less protected every year, and it ended up not conveying until like 2018 because the Lakers sucked so badly every year.
Yeah.
Or they just kept jumping in the lottery. But like, we've seen the Lakers have some down years as well. And like, yes, there's a chance that they just continue accumulating talent because they're the Lakers. But there's also a chance they're so poorly run that if, some star in his mid-30s doesn't want to sign there because he wants to start his entertainment career, like when LeBron retires, they're going to be left with like 33-year-old Anthony Davis and then what? Like, there's a real chance. There is a significant downside to giving up either of those picks. So, yeah, that is a total tangent from the trade value of Jerami versus Kuzma. But, like, frankly, I don't think either one of these guys is getting more than one first-round pick whenever they do get traded. I think both of these teams are going to hang on to these guys probably longer than they should. But I think Kuzma's probably getting moved. I would imagine he's moving this year, sometime this year.
There's no way both of these dudes are on the same team at the trade deadline. One of them is going to be on a different team.
I hope so. Oh my God, it'd be such a waste for both of them if they don't get moved.
Okay, are you ready for this one?
Oh boy, yes.
Lauri Markkanen or Zion Williamson? And this isn't, I think some, and it'll probably be Pelicans fans, and I'm not trying to, it's just the injuries. Zion was in the middle of the performance of his life when he gets injured this year. That's literally what this is that Lauri Markkanen, you can plug and play anywhere. He doesn't have the injury history. Yes, Zion has the higher peak, but they're the injury concern. And it's not even, Zion's out of shape, or is that, like, everything was on point for this guy this year and he still got injured. And it sucks. Full disclosure, I would still take Zion, but I think it's probably more of a question than people might care to admit or might care to contemplate, I should say.
Yeah, what's fun, so we're recording this in late July, so before Lauri Markkanen is eligible to renegotiate and extend his contract. And what's funny is I think his trade value might decline within the next week or two, like once he renegotiates and extends. I mean, it sounds like he will intentionally, I know there's like a 1 day window, like he's eligible August 6th. And then if he gets traded August 6th, he can sign the extension with his new team 1 day before the trade deadline or whatever. So, like, there's a chance that happens, but it sounds like he wants to intentionally wait until August 7th so he will not be trade eligible.
Which is what I would do, by the way. You have a family, you don't want to uproot your life. But I would think, you know how you and I have talked about it would be, we want to see the second apron team inflate someone's deal to the exact amount of just like someone else is making. It would just be really funny if, so he signs the extension August 6th, and then like there's a report like 2 weeks later or something, like Lauri Markkanen purchases home in Bay Area or something like that.
He signs the extension for the exact amount that Draymond Green and Reaves are making combined. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So I think right now, because he's on an $18 million contract, it's just so easy to match salary for him, where like once he's on, assuming he does get a full max deal, I think once he gets the max deal, I prefer Zion, but right now at this very moment, I prefer Markkanen because it's easier to match salary.
Is it even close once he's on his max or near max?
I think it's still close. And it wouldn't shock me if both of them got traded and Lauri got more, because Danny Ainge is Danny Ainge, and that's just what he does. Whereas Zion, like, you know, we're reaching the point with him where the talent is so immense, but if he just keeps getting hurt over and over again, like the trade value falls with every single injury from this point forward. Whereas like Lauri, you know, God forbid he tears his ACL or tears his Achilles or something, like I don't think any team's gonna hold that against him the same way. But even if Zion just like strained his hamstring again, like I think that would be more detrimental to his trade value than a torn tendon would be for Lauri's.
That's a good point. It's your turn again.
All right. Okay, this is a fun one. Austin Reaves or Jonathan Kuminga?
I feel like if I want to stay on brand, because Warriors fans were mad at me for some things that I've said about Jonathan Kuminga recently, I should say Austin Reaves. I do think it's Jonathan Kuminga because what he has the potential to do defensively. And if you can just trust him to hit even set threes. So if he's a 3-point shooter, that just opens up his game to the rim. I think it's him. And if he's going to make more than Austin Reaves in his extension. So I'm taking that into this, that I know he's on his rookie scale right now. I'm thinking he's going to get like, I don't know, probably 20 plus million. It wouldn't shock me if he got in the 25 range with the way that the Warriors seem to really value him. I still think I'm taking him because of I think we've seen the best version of Austin Reaves already, and is a good player. I don't know that we've seen his opportunity was inconsistent until basically a point last year. And I think you could argue that Golden State's offense isn't necessarily built right then or now for him to be at his peak or in the proper role. Maybe next season will be a little bit better, but the spacing could be shaky. It depends on just the types of rotations they're running and how is D'Anthony Melton doing with his shots, how much they playing Buddy Hield, yada, yada, yada. Is Draymond Green hitting threes again? Because like once every 5 years he decides to do that, apparently. Is that the pattern we're on? So I think it's Jonathan Kuminga. Where do you land on it?
Yeah, this one's tough because like I would love to know what Kuminga got on his next contract because that will factor in so much to this.
I'm going to tell you what he's going to get. Okay. It'll be an average annual value of $25 million.
If it was that low, I would take Kuminga.
Oh, you think it's going to be higher?
I'm worried.
I'm worried.
Well, that's the thing.
The cap going up, I'm good at analyzing stuff in real time and saying, oh, okay, against the cap, but I have no feel for the remember we did the over under on the extensions?
Yes.
And I went back and looked at it quickly, when everything, I was like, oh, okay. So I have no pulse apparently for what the actual market is going to be set at. I'm thinking 25's okay, 27, I could see it, but oh, you think he's going to get in the 30s?
Well, I mean, a max for someone of his experience, assuming the cap goes up 10%, which it's going to, 38.7 million.
Okay, yeah. That's I keep forgetting. But still, honestly, I guess so if is 30 the better number to assume then?
I think so. I would imagine.
All right, so 30 million for let's say it's not 5 years. Let's say 4 years and 120 million. That feels like a nice middle ground.
Yeah, I would be happy if I could keep it that low. Like that's what I'm wondering if he goes even higher.
Maybe I'm actually because I've said that I think Jonathan Kuminga could be a fantastic player, but we're extrapolating based off such a small set, the 38 game or 41 game stretch that he had last year. I just can't extrapolate. It was half a season for a team that did nothing at the end of the day.
Right.
And I know they went on that run, but it was a half a season basically. So I'm just worried we're extrapolating too much because I do think that he could be a bouncier, more physical Paul George? Probably not. But if you told me he made all-star appearances, I would absolutely be like, okay. Yeah. So maybe I'm actually too low on him when I just thought the consensus was that people were too high on him.
I mean, I think there's no question is the higher ceiling than Austin Reaves. It's just the reason I'm asking is Austin Reaves is locked into this cheap contract for another few years. So I think that fuels a lot of his trade value. Whereas Kuminga, if he's on, 4 years, 120 million, he might actually preserve some trade value. If he's on 5 years, 175 million, like what Emmanuel Quickley just got, then I lean probably a little more toward Austin Reaves. So
what's the number that would make you lean? This is the most he could make? It gets to this number, and now I'm definitely picking Austin Reaves. Is it 5 and 160? So $30 million a year over 30 million a year over 5 years. Is it the Emmanuel Quickley deal? Is it lower than that?
The Emmanuel Quickley deal would have me worried for sure. I mean, I guess the one thing working in his favor right now is if you trade for him, you're getting his matching rights. So maybe you just don't have to worry about this because no matter what, you have the potential to keep him, and the market tends to work against restricted free agents. Now maybe some team would go into next summer saying we are going to save all of our cap space. We're not going to make a run at Aaron Gordon or whoever because we want to just throw a giant offer sheet at Kuminga. But maybe you can just wait out the market and he finds himself in a similar situation to Isaac Okoro where cap space is dried up and he has no suitors, and now you're going to get him back on far less than what you expected. But yeah, I'd say anything above 30 million a year, I would start to get nervous and probably lean more toward Austin Reaves. And that's really just, again, it's because Kuminga is still such a mystery box that the high end outcomes are, as you said, multi-time All-Star. Wouldn't totally shock me. I would be pretty shocked if Austin Reaves is a multi-time All-Star at any point in his career. But can you build around Kuminga as one of your 2 or 3 best players under this new CBA, which is what that contract would necessitate, that I have more concerns about.
I'm up again, right? Are you ready? Are you ready to
Yes.
buckle up?
Yes.
LaMelo Ball or Trae Young? I bet you can guess which one I would pick, but
I would guess you would say LaMelo.
correct.
I would lean toward LaMelo as well, but it's tricky.
Do we want to end the analysis there? Let's move
Nope,
on.
that's it. That's it. No, I mean LaMelo with the ankle injuries, obviously, and whatever he does off the court with his, maybe does he know speed limits exist? That is a real concern. But Trae, I mean, it sounds like the Hawks at least gauged the market for him, and there wasn't much of one. And whether that's the contract, his defense, seems like he's at least rubbed some teammates the wrong way over the years.
He's gotten to a point for me, and I actually tend to be, I think he's underrated in how, like, if I was a team, if the Lakers had the opportunity to just throw all the picks to get Trae Young, I'm not saying they did, I would have done it. So I want to make that clear. But defense to me, I think you laid out his top three concerns is the ball dominance or lack of flexibility we've seen so far on offense, the rubbing teammates the wrong way, whatever goes on behind the scenes, and then the defense. That's the order of concern that I had. Like, where defense is just like, he's tried for the past year and a half, and no, he's never going to be good. But it's like, now that's like the third biggest concern on my list of things for Trae Young.
Yeah, exactly. Where LaMelo, like, we haven't seen him contribute to a winning basketball team yet, but is that his fault, or is that just he landed on the Hornets, and the Hornets are where basketball goes to die? And like, maybe we'll see it this year with, I mean, Brandon Miller came on really strong, especially toward the end of last year. So now he has like a legitimate co-star. Maybe Mark Williams stays healthy this year. Like, I think there would be more teams willing to gamble on LaMelo than, I mean, yeah, Trae Young, by all accounts, was available this summer, and there was not much interest, which would suggest that he did not have a ton of trade value, or that Atlanta was just asking for the moon and no team was willing to do it. But I think Charlotte could rightfully ask for the moon for LaMelo, and I would imagine they would actually be able to get him.
I think I'm with you. And also, he's just, if he's healthy, he's easier to fit alongside other players. Like, forget about the defense, forget about the behind. It's just his game is just a little bit more scalable. If you don't if you want Trae to just be your all everything, his game is actually scalable. But if you want to try some different types of roles and different types of offenses, LaMelo just makes way more sense. And obviously, he's making less too and under contract for longer. So that's going to appeal to some people. But as of right now, Trae Young is substantially the better player. He's been more available. Like, we've seen the theory of him on offense on a team that made it to the conference finals one year. LaMelo has not had that talent around him, of course. So I feel like Trae Young gets a short shrift in a vacuum, but it's just not even, I wouldn't pick him here either. So maybe I'm part of giving him the short shrift.
There you go.
You're up.
I'm up. All right. Ooh. Okay, let's do this one. Desmond Bane or Damian Lillard?
Oh man, I thought this was going to be one that we ended up skipping. I'm not going to lie. So I think it's Desmond Bane just because of the age, the defensive concerns. Damian Lillard will shoot better on catch and shoot threes next year. He was at like 33% or under 33% this past season. But Bane is like, if you go and look at how he's developed as a self-starter on the offensive end, no, it's not Damian Lillard-esque, but he can generate his own offense, do it semi-efficiently, and he's going to give you more defensively. And he's also still has that plug-and-play element where if you're going to have John Morant, or if you're going to have another ball-dominant superstar, like, yeah, he'll play off of them. I do wish he was a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, but he's going to give you way more on defense than Damian Lillard at this point. So you could still make the case that Damian Lillard in a single season is just more valuable, but part of evaluating trade stocks is looking at contracts and then trying to scale forward multiple years. And I think I pretty comfortably picked Desmond Bane in this arena.
Yeah, I would as well, but I wanted to do it to make Bucks fans mad.
Another one, and I think this will be the last one because I had other stuff I wanted to ask you about, and I wanted to go an hour on this. Cade Cunningham or Evan Mobley?
So both on identical 5-year maxes.
Correct. So you could factor it are we looking at? They're either both poison pilled or you're just moving them next summer.
Right. Man, this one really just might be team dependent. Like, I mean, if you need that guy who can run your entire offense, like if you don't have a point guard in place, you're taking Cade, obviously. If you need someone to be like the focal point of your offense, you're taking Cade. If you have the luxury of we have that guy in place, whoever it is, you're taking Mobley in a landslide.
Doesn't it kind of come down to then who fits in more situations then across the spectrum?
Like I would lean Mobley personally, but that might be the wrong pick. I just value what he brings defensively. Think he is showing signs of growth offensively as well. Whereas Cade, I'm not convinced he's ever going to be an elite defender. I think he's got the size that he doesn't have to be terrible on that end of the floor. We're not talking Trae Young here, but his value is primarily on offense. Whereas Mobley, I think, can be. I don't see any reason he can't be above average on offense one day, and we've already seen him with the ceiling of like legitimate challenger for defensive player of the year. So yeah, that I would lean that way, although I could very much understand if people preferred Cade Cunningham. This one I think more than a lot of the ones we've discussed is like just depends on the context of whatever team they're being traded to.
I think Cade is the safer pick, but that Mobley's going to offer more of a payoff if he hits his highest end outcome is how I would frame it. And I'd probably still just lean Mobley because I would operate under the assumption that whichever team is trading for him probably just views him as their lone big. Will have him in a better, or at the very least, like he's not going to be the third option of your offense. They're going to plan on using him as a number 2 or something. But I think the bigger thing is the spacing. And look, it didn't translate to the playoffs, but he hit above, and it was only like 1.8 attempts per game or whatever it was. But when he came back from that injury, he was hitting above the break threes. Like those were going in. He was taking them there. And like if that is even the part of his game now, given everything else he can do offensively, like I would say it's him, and it probably actually shouldn't be that close at this moment. If you just believe in he's gonna hit standstill above the break threes, like if you could just guarantee that probably makes this decision way easier.
Yeah, I would completely agree.
Is there any other pairing here that you see that you would like to get to that was on this list, or did you want to move on to the just couple of other questions I have for you?
We can move on. Although I do want to shout out the Walker Kessler or Mitchell Robinson that it was the last one you floated. And I just love it because it must kill you inside to even type those two names together.
What's the answer?
I have no idea because apparently Utah hates Walker Kessler.
What did he do? Did he
I don't know. It's got to be a behind the scenes.
Did he kick a puppy? What happened?
There's no logical explanation, which tells me something bad happened behind the scenes, or they see something in practice, or like maybe he got a little too big headed after the rookie year and needed some humbling. But like I as soon as he popped up in trade rumors, I feel like the reaction from everyone was just like, why? What are you doing? So
do you think is the answer just Robinson though, because he's making more money and it's not astronomical money? And with Walker Kessler, it's if you're Utah and you're trading him, it all comes down to like first round picks or other players on their rookie scales.
Yeah, or you have to like package him with Jordan Clarkson or John Collins just to get to the money to that's a good point. I mean, like I think teams would rather gamble on Walker Kessler at this point, but maybe not. Like maybe I guess you know what you're getting with Mitchell Robinson, whereas Kessler is like, this amazing rookie season and then whatever the hell happened last year, and I would imagine going from that in favor to that out of favor that quickly, a lot of teams would be like, this is weird. So what happened and why are we giving up this much to get him?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's probably the right answer. This is like a real sicko one though.
Yeah. I know. I like that. I was like all of the, Lauri versus Zion Williamson. Sure. Walker Kessler versus Mitchell Robinson's like, all right, you watch too much NBA. You got to take a break, my friends.
Mr. Toporek, thank you for giving me so much of your time for one last time for a while. It was a blast as always. Are you able to tell our listeners, though, as usual, where they can find you and all the great work that you continue to push out?
Yes, although I don't know how much work I'm going to be pushing out for the next few weeks. You can find me on Twitter at BTOPOREK. I've been very dormant there and very well might stay dormant, so I can't promise that I'm going to be pushing out a ton of articles there, but follow me at Forbes, at Liberty Ballers. The crew there does great work, especially if you care about the Sixers or hate the Sixers, which apparently seems to be most of the NBA based on the reaction to Team USA this summer. So if you want to just jump in the comments section and call Joel Embiid a communist or whatever the hell is going on these days.
Was Gilbert Arenas in the comment section?
It might be. It might. Oh yeah. Oh my God. Don't get me started on Uncle Gilbert.
No, we don't even need to dig them. That's one of I like to dunk on people sometimes, but that was one like, we don't need to give airtime to what he actually said because disgusting.
Yeah, I guess Royce White needed company, and you've gone so far off the rails. Like, how did we get from point A to point B? So, congratulations, Gil. You are making a name for yourself.
Gilbert Arenas, am I right?
Well said. Well said.
Thank you so much, Brian. This was great. I know you'll be back on again in the future, but we all here wish you the best of luck as you welcome your second child and with your continued coverage. You remain the best, sir. Thank you so much for all your time, as always.
Of course. Anytime, Dan.